Hello and welcome to the second virtual information session for the 2025 Edmonton election, hosted by Edmonton Elections. Today, we're going to be talking about the candidate nomination process. My name is Chris Hayward and I'm part of the Edmonton Elections team. Before we get into the presentation, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. Through listening and learning, Edmonton Elections is working to deliver an election for Indigenous peoples and settlers from around the world who continue to be welcomed here and who call Edmonton home. I'm joined today by Aileen Giesbrecht, Returning Officer for the 2025 Edmonton election, who will share some important information about the candidate nominations process. Hi, Aileen.
Hi, Chris.
Before we dive in, I want to let everyone know that this presentation will be available on our Edmonton Elections website in the next day or so. There's a lot of great information on that page, so if you haven't already, please do head over to edmonton.ca/elections. Aileen, over to you now to walk through the topics we're about to cover today.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks to everybody joining us online this afternoon. Today we're going to be going over the 2025 Edmonton election candidate nomination process. So in about the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to cover off a few topics. I'm going to provide a brief reminder about who Edmonton Elections is and what our role is. We're going to talk about the nomination process, particularly the eligibility requirements and the detailed steps that are required. Also would like to share some nomination process tips and tricks that we've learned over a number of years, and we're always happy at Edmonton Elections to take your questions. So if you haven't already given us a phone call or submitted them in writing, please take a moment and submit your questions to elections@edmonton.ca. And if we can't get to all the questions today, we're always updating our frequently asked questions on our website. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to leave you with some information on how to stay connected with Edmonton Elections as we approach Election Day next year. So a friendly reminder, Edmonton Elections is a growing team within the Office of the City Clerk here at the City of Edmonton. We are a non-partisan group that plans and runs the election for Mayor and 12 councillors of the City of Edmonton, the election of 9 trustees for the Edmonton School Division and 7 trustees for the Edmonton Catholic Separate School Division. So now let's jump into the nomination process. I'm going to provide a brief overview and then Chris is going to dive into more of the details. So first things first, I want to establish clearly the difference between the nomination process, which we're going to talk about in this information session, and the notice of intent to run that we covered off in our session in November. So Edmontonians that are planning to run for mayor or councillor or school board trustee for either of the school division races must submit their written notice of intent to run to Edmonton Elections before you receive any campaign contributions or have any expenses. And that's a simple email, and the process is all available on our website. The notice of intention to run can be submitted anytime during the campaign period, which started on October 31st and runs till December 31st of 2025. It's really important that you submit this paperwork prior to accepting campaign contributions or incurring any campaign expenses. So again, the notice of intent to run is connected to candidate finances. If you'd also like to have your name put on our ballots, you need to complete the nomination process. This is a very strict legislative process with multiple steps that are required to be completed during the nomination period, which again is not the same thing as the campaign period. So candidates who submit their notice of intent, your name will not appear on the ballot unless you've also completed the process called the nomination process, which we're about to talk about now, and Edmonton Elections has received your payment and accepted your forms as complete. So January 2nd of next year marks the start of the 2025 Edmonton election nomination period, which runs until noon on September 22nd. So any of you listening that want to run for mayor or councillor or trustee for either school division must complete the process during this time so that we can add your name to the ballot. The process is the same regardless of the office that you are running for, but the forms and the exact requirements are a little bit different. To complete the process, candidates must confirm they meet the eligibility requirements to run in the Edmonton election. You need to complete the required forms. And as part of the completing the forms, candidates or your teams must collect the prescribed number of signatures from eligible Edmontonians and provide an affirmation with the Commissioner of Oaths. And I'm going to go through the eligibility requirements for Edmontonians to sign your forms in the upcoming slides. Once your completed forms are ready to go, we strongly suggest that you make an appointment with Edmonton Elections to come into our offices and meet with us so we can review your forms. But we also will accept your forms either by mail or by courier. So candidate eligibility requirements are outlined in the Local Authority Election Act. We talk about this act a lot in all of our sessions, and they are the same for all candidates, whether you're running for council or to become a school board trustee. To be eligible, candidates must be at least 18 years old, a Canadian citizen, a resident of Edmonton for the 6 months prior to nomination day, which is September 22nd. You also must be a resident of Edmonton on election day, which is October 20th, 2025. Last but not least, you must otherwise not be ineligible or disqualified under the appropriate sections of the Local Authority Election Act. I'm not going to go through all of the reasons you could be ineligible or disqualified, but strongly suggest that you and your teams familiarize yourselves with sections 21 to 24 of the Act to confirm that you are not disqualified from running before you go through this whole process. The Act is available for viewing on our Edmonton Elections website as well as Municipal Affairs. So now I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to go through the nomination package and requirements in a bit more detail.
Great, thanks Aileen. And before I do that, just a quick reminder, this session is going to be available on our webpage this week, so don't feel pressure to try and memorize everything that we're saying. We know we're sharing a lot of information with you. Back to the nominations process, it's important that those nomination papers are completed correctly. They can only be received by the returning officer if they're completed fully and accurately. It's also important to know that only official Edmonton Elections nomination forms can be filed. We can't accept anything that you've made yourself at home. The official forms will be available on the For Candidates section of edmonton.ca/elections by December the 23rd. The nomination process, there are 3 forms that you can complete. 2 of those are required, that's Form 4 and Form 5. The other is our candidate contact information form, that one is optional. Form 4 is the nomination paper and candidate acceptance form, and there's a distinct version for each office: Mayor, City Councillor, Edmonton School Division Trustee, and Edmonton Catholic's separate School Division Trustee. It's a candidate's responsibility to ensure that they're using the appropriate form. As Aileen mentioned, candidates must collect a minimum number of signatures from eligible voters on their Form 4, and we'll cover exactly what those requirements look like in the coming slides. But it's important to know that those signatures must be original inked signatures. Digital or electronic signatures can't be accepted. As Aileen mentioned, you must make a sworn or affirmed acceptance statement with a Commissioner of Oaths on Form 4, and that's a service that Edmonton Elections can provide if you drop your nomination package off with us in person at our office. To help you through all this, we've produced a how-to guide that provides important information on each step and each section of Form 4. That guide will be available on the For Candidates section of our website shortly. We recommend that if you're interested in filing nomination papers, you take a walk through that guide before you start completing the forms. There's a lot of helpful, useful information in there. The other required form, Form 5, is the Candidate Financial Information Form. That confirms the candidate's name, their address, the location the campaign records are kept, and, if it's applicable, the address of the financial institution that holds the account where the candidate will be depositing contributions. If you're providing that information, you also have to provide us with the names of folks who have the signing authority on those accounts. You have to open a specific campaign account as soon as possible after you've received contributions that total $1,000. And remember, you can only collect contributions if you submitted a notice of intent. You'll find that the information that's required on Form 5 is very similar to the information that's collected during the notice of intent process, but Form 5 is a requirement of all candidates, even if you've already gone through that notice of intent process. Lastly, the optional candidate contact information form. That's your opportunity to provide us with your social media accounts, your website, and any other campaign contact information that you'd like us to put on your website. We do need your permission before we publish that, though.
Thanks, Chris. Just before you go to the next slide, so I just see on the slide on the screen under Form 4, you mentioned that that has to be signed by a Commissioner of Oaths, and Edmonton Elections does have a Commissioner of Oaths that's happy to accommodate you when you come in for your appointment. Can you just confirm if there's a fee that's required for that service?
No, there's not. That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. None of the services that we provide require you to pay a fee. We actually prefer that you bring Form 4 in without it being commissioned, without you having taken that step. That just gives us the opportunity to work through any omissions or minor errors that you might have made on there. Then we can commission it after the fact. But no, there's no cost for any of the services that we provide, including the Commissioner of Votes piece.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, back to signatures and deposits. As we mentioned, the number of signatures that are required and the amount of the deposit differs depending on the office that a candidate is running for. So if you are looking to be a candidate for mayor, you must collect 100 signatures from eligible electors. Again, those signatures must be made on the official nomination form and they must be inked wet signatures, not digital. Candidates for mayor must also provide a $500 deposit. Candidates for city councillor and Edmonton Public Schools trustee must collect 25 signatures from eligible voters and pay a deposit of $100. That deposit has to be paid at the same time as the nomination papers are filed. Please don't try and prepay that. Those deposits can be received via cash, certified check or money order, debit or credit card, or e-transfer. The Edmonton Catholic Separate School Division hasn't quite finalized their deposit and signature requirements yet. Once they do, we'll be sure to provide that information on our webpage.
Yeah, and just one question before you change this slide over. I see that the eligible signatures required for the Edmonton Public School School Trustee and City Councillor is 25. So if I submit my forms to run in one of the races and then a couple months down the line I'd like to switch, can I just transfer my forms over?
Yeah, I love these surprise questions. So you have to, yes and no. You are able as a candidate to withdraw your nomination. There is a process for that. Reach out to us if you want clarity on it. You have to take that step before the nomination day, however. Once that process is done, you can resubmit or submit a new Form 4. It doesn't have to be for the same election, same race that you entered before. But you have to take the step to withdraw before you restart the nomination process.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, back to signatures and deposits. What makes somebody eligible to sign a nomination form? So signatures must be collected from folks who are eligible to vote for the candidate. So that means they have to be a Canadian citizen, they must be at least 18 years old on election day, and they have to live in the area that the candidate is seeking to represent. So if you're a mayoral candidate, you must collect signatures from folks who are Edmonton residents. If you're a candidate for city council or school board trustee, the folks that are signing your nomination papers must live in the appropriate ward.
So just to confirm again, candidates don't have to live in the ward they're seeking to represent, but all the signatures have to be from eligible residents in the ward in which they're running?
Yeah, that's an important distinction, yes. For candidates, you must be a resident of Edmonton 6 months prior to nomination day and on election day. For folks who are nominating you, the folks that are signing your form, they have to be eligible to vote for you, which means they have to live in the ward that you are seeking to represent.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome. For deposits, those, as I said, those have to be submitted along with the nomination papers. If you're submitting your deposit in person, you can pay in cash, debit or credit card, certified check, money order, or e-transfer. If you're submitting your papers via the mail, though, please don't send your deposit in cash, and please don't send us your credit card or debit card information. Okay, so how to submit your forms. As I said on the previous slide there, candidates can submit their papers in person or via the mail or courier. In-person appointments, though, are highly recommended. They ensure the availability of our staff, and it gives us the opportunity to share some key information with you as you work through the nomination process. At those appointments, which we think will last about 30 minutes, you'll work with a member of our candidate processes team who'll review your forms with you and help you address any errors or omissions that might have been made so that they can be submitted for the returning officer's review. As we talked about earlier, we can provide those Commissioner of Vote services free of charge at the appointment as long as the candidate is present and has the required identification. Again, we recommend that you don't have your forms commissioned ahead of time, as it gives us the opportunity to correct those small errors that you might have inadvertently made. Most appointments will take place at the elections office on the West End, and I'll share that address at the end of the presentation. But twice a month, appointments will be scheduled at City Hall. You can make an appointment by using our online booking tool on edmonton.ca/elections, and that'll be up and live shortly, or you can call or email our office. You can also drop into the Edmonton's elections office without an appointment. We'll aim there to offer the same services through that drop-in process, but you might need to wait if our staff are busy conducting appointments with other candidates. If no one's available, you may have to make an appointment to come back, or we can review the forms in your absence. You might need to return to the office even if the forms are correct for us to take that Commissioner of Oath step and for you to pay that deposit. It's best practice, though, to ensure that you can access our full services, please do make an appointment. Mail submissions can be addressed to our elections office. We recommend using a courier service if you're going to submit things that way. And the complete package must be submitted, which means you have to fill out the entire Form 4, all of Form 5, and provide your nomination deposit. And again, only certified check or money orders can be submitted through the mail. One final reminder, drop-in services are only available at the elections office, not at City Hall. And again, we encourage everybody to please make an appointment so you don't have to wait for a member of our team to become available. Okay, back to you now, Aileen, for some tips and tricks.
Thanks, Chris. So over the years, we have encountered some consistent struggles with the nomination process. So what we're about to share is hopefully going to make this experience a bit more easy for you. So number one, when you are collecting signatures, it's our strong recommendation that you exceed the minimum number of signatures from residents required. This affords you some protection if any of the signatures are found to be invalid. So make sure that the people who sign your nomination forms are eligible. If you're a candidate for councillor or trustee, make sure the residents signing your form live within the ward that you seek to represent and are eligible voters. We also strongly suggest that you verify the address that's being provided is complete and legible. This does include providing a postal code and the full name so that we can validate it. When submitting nomination forms, review the material available on our website. The how-to guide and the checklist are created to make this process much easier for candidates. We know things have changed from election to election, and we're here to make things easy and to answer any questions that you have. And we know we've already said this a few times, but we highly recommend that you make an appointment to submit your forms in person. Edmonton election staff are happy to accommodate you, and if we've got staff on hand previously booked, it's just going to make that process a little bit easier. If you are going to submit your nomination papers and deposit in the mail, please don't send us your credit card information. Chris has already talked about how to make sure that you can provide the payment, but again, it's just best if you make an appointment and you try to pop into the election office. It's just going to try to minimize any delays in validating and accepting your nomination papers. And last but not least, when you do come to your appointment, bring all your forms and a piece of government-issued ID if you are the candidate. The ID is a requirement if you would like Edmonton Elections to commission your nomination papers. So if you're sending your nomination papers to us with an agent or somebody acting on your behalf, we won't be able to commission those unless you're in person and you've brought the appropriate identification. So hope those tips and tricks are helpful. Back to you, Chris.
Great, thank you. Some questions. My turn to ask you things now. So
Okay.
these are questions that we've received in our inbox over the course of the last few weeks. So these have been offered or asked frequently. We thought it would be important to reiterate them. We've already touched on this, but I want to ask it again. If I'm a candidate for city councillor or for school board trustee, do I have to live in the ward that I want to run in?
Great question, and you're right, we have had this question quite a few times. You don't need to be a resident of the ward that you're going to be running in, but you do need to be a resident of Edmonton the 6 months prior to nomination day. Nomination day is September 20th. You also have to be a resident on election day, which is October 20th.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one thing I think I want to add to that, it is the candidate's responsibility to make sure that everybody who's signing the form for is eligible to do so. So that includes the candidate and also the folks who are going to be signing the form to nominate you. So do your diligence there, make sure folks are eligible, and remember, exceed that minimum if you can. We've already talked about this, but again, I'm going to ask it again. Can I use digital or electronic signatures on my nomination paper?
Great question, but the Local Authority Election Act, which is the legislation that governs how we plan and execute the election, does not require electronic signatures. You must provide, the Form 4 has to be completed clearly with inked signatures, and my strong recommendation, please do not use pencil.
No, don't use pencil. when you go to our website and you're looking for the forms, you'll find that those are available on fillable PDF. So there are some things on the front that you can complete online, but please don't do that if it's the signature piece. That has to be an original wedding signature. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the differences in the services that Edmonton Elections can provide. You talked about appointments, you talked about drop-in services. Can you just clarify the difference again between those two things?
Absolutely. So whether you make an appointment, which we are absolutely encouraging, or you're just dropping off your forms at the elections office, the Edmonton Elections team is going to review Form 4 and Form 5, ideally with you, and we can answer any questions that you might have. We can also complete the candidate acceptance portion with you when you're in person. Again, we've said this a few times, but we just want to make sure that your experience is as efficient as possible, and we really do recommend that you do make an appointment. We have a dedicated candidate processing team, but they could be tied up with other appointments. And we also want to make sure that we have a commissioner on oath just on standby in case we need to commission your forms, or if there's any corrections and you've brought your ID in as a candidate, and we're able to do that on the spot. So again, making an appointment with Edmonton Elections is really straightforward and easy. We've created an online booking tool. Just give us a call or send us an email. Edmonton Elections are always happy to help.
Great. And lastly, oh no, we already talked about the Commissioner of Oath's fee,
Yep.
and there isn't one, so we won't ask that again. But what I think I want to leave us with is, I'm a candidate, I've submitted my Form 4, I know that's required, I've submitted Form 5 at the same time, I know that's required, and I've paid my deposit. Does that mean I can collect contributions and incur campaign expenses now?
So fair question, but again, there's been some changes in the legislation between the last election and 2021 and this one. And so the notice of intent to run is a requirement in the legislation before collecting campaign contributions or incurring any expenses. So again, it's a really simple process. The information's on our website. There's no form. It's just a quick email. But please do submit your notice of intent as well as completing your Form 4, Form 5, and your deposit, and that enables you to collect and expense campaign expenses as well as have your name put on our ballot next October.
Okay, great, thank you. I think those are all the questions that I want to ask today. If there's something that's top of mind for you, you didn't hear your question asked, please do email us at elections@edmonton.ca. You can also visit our website, a ton of great information there. What we'll leave you with, there are multiple ways that you can stay connected with Edmonton Elections. Follow us on X at EDM Elections. Again, regularly check the website, edmonton.ca/elections. We update that frequently with a lot of important information. You can email us at elections@edmonton.ca if you have specific questions and you can't find answers on the webpage. And lastly, sign up to receive our e-newsletter for regular updates. That'll launch in January, and you'll find the link to subscribe on our webpage. Okay, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Aileen, for providing us with this great overview. There'll be a lot more of these sessions. We'll cover a variety of topics as we work through the election period, and we hope to see you again for those sessions. Bye-bye.